Hello, thank you for joining today's program preview for the Leadership Masterclass, Your Journey to Exceptional Impact. My name is Tim Koo, and I'm Director of Client Development with USC Marshall Executive Education. Joined here with me today is our splendid Executive Education Account Manager, Olga Malinowska. I am excited that we are able to provide this course preview to you today with Dr. Jay Conger. Before I introduce him, a few logistical notes. The upcoming program will take place all day on campus at USC from April 25th to 27th, 2023. If you have any questions during the preview, feel free to type in the chat, and we will have a few minutes at the end to answer them. If you would like to schedule a time to chat further with me, we will share those details at the end as well. Now, let's move on. It is my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Jay Conger, one of the world's foremost experts on leadership. Jay serves as the Henry Kravis Chaired Professor of Leadership Studies at Claremont McKenna College. He is also an esteemed faculty with the USC Center for Effective Organizations, serving as an affiliated research scientist. Jay is an executive educator, coach, and program designer, working with thousands of leaders and over 600 organizations in his career. A prolific author, he has written 15 books spanning the topics of leadership. We are excited to have him teach his program with USC Marshall Exec Ed in what we hope to be impactful not just for you as a participant, but to the organization you are leading. Without further ado, take it away, Jay.
Thank you, Tim. Nice to meet all of you, at least virtually. I thought I'd begin by saying a few words about my background in terms of who I am and how I became interested in leadership and why I'm teaching a master class on leadership. So I actually developed an interest in leadership at age 10. My dad had an amazing job. He was the Deputy Chief of Protocol for the United States State Department. And what that job entails is being paid to host events and parties for world dignitaries. So he was the host for Khrushchev when he came to the United States for 2 weeks. Queen Elizabeth, Charles de Gaulle, Nehru, go down a long list of these very famous people, some of whom were leaders, some of whom were not. He would come home and share stories of who they were. And as a young boy, I said, this leadership activity is really interesting. I'd love to be a leader. So needless to say, I ran for school office. I won sometimes, I lost sometimes. And I began to learn literally in the act of leadership, one, how rewarding it was, the impact you could have, but also how challenging and difficult it was. That you really had to have some skills around interpersonal ability. You had to be able to be a strong communicator. And so that began a lifelong journey in leadership. Now, what also probably sets me apart from many of my academic peers is that I was actually a line leader. And I ran international marketing for the largest solar cell manufacturer in the world. And as I would tell you, that's where I really learned about the challenge of leadership. This company grew tenfold in a span of about 8 years. And so I went from leading a small team of people to a very large, complex team of people. And I worked with clients all over the world. And I began to realize that much of leadership, unfortunately, you and I are not trained to step into these roles. We actually end up kind of learning accidentally on the job. We may or may not have effective bosses who are role models. And so much of how we learn leadership is haphazard. And this masterclass is designed to bring together for you in a 3-day period a really deep dive into leadership and what it takes to become a really masterful leader, not just a good leader, but a masterful leader. It also is unique in the sense that it's focused on you. So you've probably been to certainly courses before, and you're all graduates of a college or university, and most of the time you picked up a lot of knowledge. You committed it to memory, you filled it out on an exam. This is unique. This is a class that really is looking at who you are, and more importantly, who you could become. I have worked with over my career, literally tens of thousands of managers and executives. Part of what I do today is executive coaching. And so I have literally seen every kind of individual, every kind of background. And I'll share with you that leadership is learned. And in some ways, this is really an accelerator to help you become the best leader you can. The program is built around kind of three core dimensions. The first is building your self-awareness. It might be surprising, but in my executive coaching, which I really began about 15 years ago, I started to see that most of us didn't really understand our impact on the people we worked with. We had an idea of our style, but we often didn't understand how people perceived it and how they experienced it. And so we have to begin with a foundation of awareness. And that's the reason we have a 360 survey that's included in the program. And then you and I will have opportunities throughout the 3 days to do some reflecting on lessons learned, on style issues. And we'll use that to help you understand what your strengths are that you should build out, what your gaps are that over the coming years could become problematic, and how you need to tackle those. And there's also a chance that we have one or two bad behaviors, or what I call derailing behaviors, which you've been promoted with that don't seem to have much impact. But one day, potentially with a certain boss or a certain job or a certain situation, they could become derailers. And so we'll look at those three kind of dimensions of us: strengths, gaps, and potential derailers. We'll then build and sharpen certain core leadership skills, the ones that really differentiate the good leaders from the masterful leaders. And these come in three categories. I never think of leadership as just leading downwards. Most of you are spending time leading upwards, superiors, customers, board members. Most of you are spending a lot of time leading sideways, peers, to make things happen. And finally, leading downwards. So we're going to sharpen your skills across all three directions, because ultimately leadership is as much about influencing powerful others as it is the people who report to you. And then finally, the last core dimension is crafting a development plan. So when you come out of this masterclass, you've actually got a blueprint for what you can do over the next 6 to 12 months to really build out a strength or two further to address an important gap that's going to potentially help you, if you address it, to go to the next level or a level of impact you'd like. And then also to be thinking about any derailers you might have. So those are the three core themes. I'm going to share with you a little bit about the content so you get an idea of the different learning experiences you'll have. So let's take a look at that. At the heart of leadership is the ability to be a very masterful communicator. So we're going to look at how you can hone your communication skills, what it takes to both mobilize people, but also to communicate in memorable ways. You and I have the fundamental problem of meeting after meeting after meeting, and pretty quickly people are forgetting what's the right thing to do, how do we need to take the decisions we need to take. This class will teach you kind of how to cut through the clutter of overloaded memories and help you craft very sticky leadership messages. Leading your superiors. Much of your impact comes from shaping the mindsets and decisions of the people who lead you. So we spent a good bit of the course in looking at how you can be more influential upstairs. Persuading to mobilize your colleagues. I wish we were all masters of our destinies, But as you've learned, your peers get to determine whether or not you get certain resources, whether or not they'll help you to the extent you need. And so persuasion turns out to be one of the most important leadership skills you can possess. And we'll do a deep dive around how you can hone and really refine your persuasion skills. Your success is completely dependent on the success of the people you lead. And so we spend a good bit of time looking at how you can accelerate and develop the people who work for you. I always like to say you're only as good as those who literally work for you. And we'll look at kind of fundamental skills, which most of us don't do well, paradoxically, feedback and coaching. We'll then look at something which you probably read about and you've heard about. You may not have seen good examples, but the idea of vision and setting clear priorities. I always say the first responsibility of leadership is to set direction. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll also focus on an effective development plan so that when you leave the program, you have a set of very clear, actionable steps to help you develop yourself after the program. So in many ways, the program is really designed to hone your awareness, hone certain skills, but more importantly, be a catalyst for you to go forward to be an effective leader. So that's the range of topics. There are a couple more, which when you join the program, you'll learn about. I want to say a little bit about the learning experience. One of the highest compliments that I get in programs is people come up and say, Jay, I can't believe that was 3 days. It felt like 8 hours. That for me is a high compliment that time just flies. It is designed to be very interactive. Most people will say that was the most fun course I've ever taken. Also the most engaging and provocative and stimulating course I've ever taken. Secondly, because I was a line leader, I'm always worried about application. So we'll constantly be working between your learnings in the classroom and the real issues you're facing at work. And so almost everything we do ties back to, okay, so what do I do with this on the job? How do I tackle this? What's the real issue? And I'll ask you to bring leadership challenges that you're currently facing, and we'll use those as raw materials to learn from. You'll get quite a bit of time with me, and we also offer the potential to have a coach after the program. It's pretty unusual to have that kind of access, and so that's one of the qualities that sets this class apart. The learning methods, I'm a big fan of variety, so we'll have case studies, we'll work on your own issues, we'll have small group assessment and reflection exercises, and it'll be fast-paced. So I wanted to give you a little taste of what the program will be like. And so we're going to do a real short exercise. It's a reflective exercise. As I mentioned, we have a number of these in the program, and we'll give you a simple taste of what it's like. So in a moment, I'm going to show you a set of leadership styles. I'm going to ask you to reflect on these. I'm going to ask you to choose the two that best describe you. And then we'll put you into a 6-minute breakout to discuss your reflections with a couple of colleagues who've joined us today. So here are the styles we're going to look at. So what we know from research is that you can cluster what might seem like dozens and dozens of styles into kind of 6 dominant styles. The first is the pace setter. So the pace setter is the person who says, let's do it. And why wait? Let's do it now. But by the way, they're hoping that you'll watch them and do it the way they do it. So they tend to be people of action. They tend to be very entrepreneurial, and the world never moves fast enough for them. The second style is the expert. I'm the most informed, I'm the most expert, and I know what to do here. And let me share with you my insights and wisdom, and we'll make it happen. The third style is the relational style. This is the person in a leadership role who's always thinking about the people. They're the ones who know how many children you have. They know what age they're at. They know about your parents. They know a lot about who you are as a person. The fourth style is the participative style. This is the person who feels it's very important to get all of our perspectives. And so they tend to be excellent at building consensus. Coaching style. This is the individual who has a passion for people development. And so often throughout a day, they'll find short windows, long windows to sit down with you, ask you your interests, or help you around developing a skill set or a body of knowledge. And finally, there's the inspirational leader. These are people who really love a vision and really love to mobilize people through positive energy and get them excited about opportunities. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is look at those 6 styles. And I'd like you to pick the 2 that you feel best describe you. So if I were to ask a couple of people who work with you, Karen, they would say, oh, Karen is definitely a coaching and pace setter leader. Now, I'd like you to take a moment when you identify the 2 and ask yourself, well, what strengths come with those styles in your case? Kind of what do you notice over and over those styles have brought you in terms of strengths at work? So just make a short notation. Maybe the relationship style, because you know people so well, they bring you bad news early and first. You're the first one to know about stuff that's happening because people trust you and they feel like you've got their back. So those kinds of strengths. Now, what we also know is that each leadership style throws off what's called a shadow, and that's something we'll look at in the course. So oftentimes the relational style is a person who's conflict averse. Relationships are so important to them that they're worried about being too direct around conflict. And so the shadow or problematic side is that they avoid difficult conversations. Paradoxically, they're the one style that actually could have them because they are very relational. But because the relationship comes first, they're worried about conflict. You can imagine the expert style tends not to do a lot of development and coaching. They tend to love to transfer knowledge, but they're not very good at the development or coaching side. So see if you can identify a shadow to each of the 2 styles that are yours. And now thinking ahead over the coming year, which of these 6 that you don't do much of are not characteristic of you, would it be worth investing in, given what you know is likely to unfold over this coming year? So pick one that for you would be a really important developmental style. And when we go into breakouts, I'm going to ask you to share that style and why you've chosen it. So Olga is going to put us into breakouts. We'll have 6 minutes to briefly share 2 styles, strengths of each, shadow of each, and which one do you need to develop of the 6. So Olga, they're ready to go, and we'll see you back here in 6 minutes. Well, welcome back. Karen, you were very kind enough to smile when I mentioned your name. What 2 styles were your top 2 styles?
Let's see, I'm taking notes.
Great.
For me, it was relational and coaching. And the reason I selected, sorry, my lights are going on and off. The reason I selected those 2 is because in my line of work, I am expected to know my population, the employees. I'm expected to interact with them, and having that in like that knowledge or those relationships really helps me to have effective conversations. I know how to approach my audience when I'm having difficult conversations. I can kind of tailor my delivery. But the shadow to that is that I don't always know what the reaction will be to having difficult conversations. And so I have to go in each time knowing that I may not be their favorite person in the world when they leave my office, and I have to be okay with that. And I have to be able to walk around and still say good morning and still say hello. So it's a little challenging in that way. And then coaching, because what I do is I try to help people solve their own issues before they have to escalate. And so I really try to, expand my knowledge base and listen and say, well, I heard this, but what if you said it like this? But then I think also the shadow to that is I may not always know how to coach people. I may not always give the right advice. And so I want to be very careful because coaching I know is a whole other territory, and you have to be very careful with the advice that you give people because you might give them the wrong advice. So it's risky as well.
So in the program, we'll talk about the fact that there are really two types of coaching. There's kind of highly directive coaching, where you're literally telling them, here's what I feel you need to do, versus developmental coaching, which is much more open-ended, where you have them explore the solutions and options. And so understanding where to use which style is really important. And it sounds like in a number of your cases, developmental coaching could be very powerful, where you don't have to own the answer. You don't have to own here's the best thing to do. Which style did you choose going forward that you'd like to develop?
The pace setter. Because and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but I feel like sometimes I'm so methodical in thinking about my approaches that I don't just jump right into something like, okay, let's go, let's do it. I'm almost the one that's like, okay, hold on, let's pause, let's think about it. And that doesn't necessarily work in some organizations. Like, people want the answer now. So I need to definitely work on that approach.
Great. And the other style, the consensus style, is the other one that often needs to be balanced with a pace setter.
Mm-hmm.
So your style and the other one are the two that need that balancing act. It's very, one of the things which of course we'll do is help you think about how to do that, how to, where and when to make that transition, because it is very challenging to kind of leave your style at different times, but we'll explore that issue in the program. Well, I thank you for your sharing. I want to open it up to see if there's specific questions that you have about the class that I could answer for you while we're here together. Anybody have a question about content, approach, experience? And you can either unmute or drop it in the chat. Karen?
Is this an in-person?
It is.
It is, right? Okay.
Yeah. Something that's so focused on you and your development in person is very important. It really allows me and yourself to do a lot deeper reflection. Any other questions? Yes. Is it Elosa? Eliosa?
Yes. I'm sorry. I am speaking English, so I'm sorry if my spelling is not so very well. So I have one question, because I think I'm an inspirational this type, and sometimes I feel not very comfortable because people copy me. So I have a friend that told me it is cream. This is in Spanish. It is a beautiful thing. It is marvelous, but sometimes I'm not comfortable because I know girls or men are watching me, but physically watching, and I'm uncomfortable. So I want to understanding that it is not a bad thing, but I'm shy, and I don't know how I had to feel this, because if students of other colleagues copy so much or speak behind of me, I would like how I have to react, had the best reaction to this.
So one of the really wonderful things about having a course with a 360 survey, where we literally survey the people who work with you, is you'll get some data about how they're experiencing your style. We also will be asking, what recommendations they would have as well. So you'll see all styles have strengths and all styles have shadows. And what we're really trying to do is maximize the strength of our style, but dampen down the shadow, manage that shadow as much as possible. We also need more versatility in our style. And that's one of the lessons you'll take away from the course, which is that in many ways, we don't have enough versatility as leaders, that we've learned to operate within one or two styles, and they've worked pretty well for us, but we need to increase our repertoire of styles. So then the question is, well, what does the context or environment demand in terms of new styles or styles we need to do more of? And that's one of the things we'll look at in the course, because I don't know how many of you have children, but if you have children, I have two. It took me a little while to figure out how to motivate and lead the first child. And I thought, oh, great, I've figured it out. And then my second child arrived, and they were completely different. So whatever I did that worked so well here didn't work very well here. And I began to realize as a parent, I had to have a lot more versatility in my style. And that's what leadership is like. That leadership is like having 10 children and they're all different. And you have to be a really quick study. And then you have to figure out how you have to adapt, but they also have to figure out how they have to adapt to you. And so a lot of what we're learning is to increase the versatility of our styles. That people who become exceptional leaders are constantly figuring out, okay, here's where I need to move, or here's how I have to tweak. And that will be part of the insights from the course. And you'll see whatever kind of questions you have about your style, they're usually related to the shadow. And you'll get some feedback about, well, what is the shadow? What does it look like? How's the experience? And how can I compensate for it? And I would say, having worked with people from the age of literally 18 to 80, everybody has a capacity to grow and develop as a leader. Everybody. There used to be an old debate, really at the beginning of the 20th century, were leaders born or were they made? 99.9% of leaders are made. And what this course is doing is it's helping you understand how you can make yourself far more influential, to realize not only your aspirations potential, but the potential of other people who work with you. At its heart, leadership is really about being influential. And what this course is really about is becoming the most influential version of yourself, becoming your best self as a person who navigates complex relationships, who influences people, and who really is able to drive change and vision for the future, for not only yourself, but your organization. At its heart, it's about realizing your potential. That's what the class is about. And sadly, having worked with people who are older, I've learned that many people feel they didn't get to that potential. And my mission in life is to help us all get to that, realize the gifts that we have inside of us. And that's a lot of what leadership is about. So if you feel you got a lot of potential you want to unleash and harness, this is a great class for you. This will help you. It'll hold the mirror, but also I'm a coach who, as you can tell, I'm very supportive, but I'll also push you and I'll provoke you a bit. And at the same time, we'll have fun. So I think a lot of people often say how playful I am, but I'm playful with a mission. Any other questions that you might have? So one of the things you should know, there is an option in the course. in addition to the 360, you can engage a coach who will work with you after the program. And for those of you interested in that as a follow-up option, I recommend it very strongly. If you've not ever had a professional coach, they can kind of, a bit like a personal trainer, they can keep you a little more disciplined on the journey after the class, because you're going to leave with a blueprint of what to focus on. But having somebody who is a sounding board can be very powerful. Well, I look forward to seeing you all in person at the Masterclass. Thank you for coming today. Tim and Olga, thank you for putting this together. And I will see everybody hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
very
Thank
welcome.
you. Take care.
Gracias.
De nada.
If you have any questions, feel free to schedule a call with me. This QR code goes to my Calendly account, or you can grab some time to speak with me. Thank you.